and your people. It's also a great joy to see you again and to support you and to act together with you. So that's why I'm delighted to welcome you here today.
Merci beaucoup, President Macron, and thank you again for the welcoming nature in which you agreed to host and to collaborate with New Zealand in the way that you have. The fact that we have, after a phone call, I think some 6 weeks ago, find ourselves here with an action plan to take us forward with both companies and leaders from a number of different countries around the table speaks to the success of our cooperation, and I want to thank you again for that. The terror attack of March 15 in Christchurch was truly unprecedented in its use of social media as a weapon in the attack and the subsequent spread of the terrorist hateful message. 51 men, women and children from the New Zealand Muslim community were killed and were killed online. Initially, the live stream was watched by only a few hundred people live, but then shared and spread at such a pace that YouTube recorded 1 upload per second to their platform within that first 24-hour period. The social media dimension to the attack was unprecedented. And our response today with the adoption of the Christchurch Call is equally unprecedented as well. Never before have countries and tech companies come together in the wake of an horrific attack to commit to an action plan that will deliver collaboratively work in new technology built to make our communities ultimately safer. And already today we have seen some first steps in response to the Christchurch Call. Facebook has made a start with changes to their community rules around live streaming. And as I say, this is a first step as we look forward to further work to stop social media being perverted as a tool for terrorists and preserving it instead as a means for individuals and communities to connect. Others are taking action also, and not just limited to the leaders who have been here today or to the companies. The New Zealand Superannuation Fund has announced today their support for the call and have coordinated a group of 55 other funds worth over 5 trillion New Zealand dollars who intend to reinforce the call by monitoring companies' behaviour and ensure they are delivering on the commitments that are within the Christchurch Call. The funds have said they will use their collective leverage to also raise concerns with the companies on issues as they arise. In addition, New Zealand's internet service providers have also stated their support for the call, and we encourage any organisation who can contribute to its success to get involved. Today, though, must be day one of change. And as was said in the meeting today by one of the companies, today is the first day of the next 4 months. The Christchurch Call is a roadmap for action, and it is pleasing to see the statement from 5 major tech companies committing all of them to a set of individual actions and collaborative actions as well. This 9-point commitment will lead, I hope, and which is a first, to further change that, if successful, will help to eradicate terrorism from their platforms. New research, strengthening terms of use and community standards, shared technology development, and establishing a crisis response mechanism present very real and very tangible points of difference and change. Today marks 2 months to the day since the attack. The Christchurch Call to Action, an action plan for change, is a global response to a tragedy that occurred on the shores of my country, but were ultimately felt around the world. It commits us to action to make our communities safer. It commits us to work together and to collaborate and drive results. But fundamentally, it ultimately commits us all to build a more humane internet, which cannot be misused by terrorists for their hateful purposes. And working together under the banner of the Christchurch Call, I genuinely believe we can and will make real progress. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Première ministre. Nous allons maintenant répondre.
We're now going to answer your questions.
Jo Moyer from Radio New Zealand. This question is for both of you. What message does it send that Mark Zuckerberg was here last week and didn't bother to attend the summit, and also the fact there is no representative from the US government despite being in town for the G7? Is that a massive snub to you both and the Muslim community still reeling from the attack?
Look, I'll leave President Macron to speak specifically to the question around Facebook in Paris and Mark Zuckerberg's recent meeting with President Macron. Just to acknowledge, though, of course, they were represented here today. They have announced tangible changes to their platform, which are first steps, and they have endorsed the call. And so that was obviously an incredibly important step for the Christchurch call to action. On the United States, actually the statement that they've put out demonstrates their broad and in-principle support for the Christchurch call to action. And that's not insignificant. And again, that level of engagement, that acknowledgement of support for the principles of what we're driving here with this call to action, I think demonstrate that there is a real shared desire to eradicate terrorism and violent extremism online, and that is ultimately shared by the United States. And again, the fact that we had the representation we had around the table today, the fact we had both countries, but in a turn of events, something that is new, companies, and they all remarked on the fact that this was a very different approach than they'd experienced before. That is what will allow us to break new ground. That is what will take us forward. And I think that's incredibly important.
Pour ce qui est de Facebook.
Regarding Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg was in Paris last week. We had a long discussion. Facebook was at the heart of many difficulties in relation to this topic. We discussed this very clearly regarding the way Facebook is used by terrorists during an attack or by hostage takers. France had to experience as the hostages use the facilities provided by Facebook to show off their terrible act. Mark Zuckerberg has made a commitment with his company to engage in an innovative cooperation with the French government. As part of the smart regulation, he has authorized the regulator teams, the teams of French regulators, to join his machine to share confidential information to fight against terrorist content, but also hatred content or harassment methods that can be used through Facebook to better regulate Facebook. We're going to translate this exchange into the framework of a draft bill which will be submitted to Parliament. So he couldn't join us today for personal reasons, but he sent Nick Clegg, was at the table today. We had a long exchange of views with him, and Facebook has undertaken to cooperate with the government to deprive the users of Facebook of the facilities of live Facebook, because they are identified as dangerous by the platform or by the government. So this is a great step forward, a great progress. Clearly, we must go further, and the Christchurch appeal goes in that direction. But I think it would be unfair on Facebook if we say that they were indifferent or uncooperative following the initiatives taken. Next, regarding the American government, first of all, I see the progress they have made since the summer of 2017. I mentioned the Franco-British initiative in 2017. At the G7 meeting in 2017, we did not manage to achieve a common position. The presence, particularly of Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, shows that in North America, freedom of expression is of great importance, is essential in that part of the world. They recognize that it has to be protected, but we must regulate the internet better. We must create a form that allows us to regulate content better. The presence of Prime Minister Trudeau during the period shows his personal commitment, his country's commitment, and this is very important for us. And it shows that North America is on the move, is moving in this regard. The US government has declared that it supports our objectives. It has not formally signed the Christchurch Agreement, but we will be doing everything to get their commitment, their more formal commitment. And the progress we have made, in my view, the fact that the US government thinks it's important that we should come together, that they share our objectives, and this is very positive indeed. Sam Checkner of the Wall Street Journal. In what way is the Christchurch appeal and the commitments it made, in what way are they different from the preceding commitments that were made in preceding calls? In 3 months' time, what will have changed for the digital players and people with bad intentions? In very practical terms, the Christchurch appeal is different because it brings together all the internet players, all the internet operators who are jointly responsible for implementing what we have decided on today. Next, these commitments are part of a context of exchanges, continual exchanges with the private sector, the internet private sector, and with heads of state and government. But what we wanted to do was to go further, and the aim of the appeal we have issued is to be more specific, with clear commitments to withdrawing terrorist content from what is online. We have decided, initially the directive was purely European. Now we have broadened the scope of the geographical scope. So this includes New Zealand, Canada, Indonesia. We have set a common framework involving internet operators to fight against terrorist content, and they have made a commitment to take practical action in support of our appeal. So today's appeal broadens the scope of what was done geographically in recent years, and we now have a much broader scope. And also in terms of methodology, we are bringing together internet players, free foundations, civil society, with political and technical support. Based on this appeal, the leaders of all the companies' president will be meeting in Aqaba to see how to implement all of this in practical terms, to define cooperative processes so that all the governments who have signed up to the Christchurch Agreement can find the dangerous and what type of commitments and how we implement them in practical terms beyond the terrorist content, in terms also of the speed at which the content will be withdrawn or will be prevented from spreading. We had discussions on this. You can ask a platform to withdraw all content that can appear to be terrorist content, including what is considered to be in the grey area, and to do so within an hour, to withdraw it within an hour. And we want them to act on content that is going viral. And now, on the basis of this appeal, in this forum, we're going to define the technical conditions for implementing this, and in September there will be a meeting. We will draw up a list of the concrete actions taken on the basis of today's appeal, We will draw up a list of the content that has been withdrawn on the basis of the commitments made today, and we will try to broaden the countries, the businesses, the companies, and the players. So the main change is a geographical broadening, greater intensity of technical cooperation with internet companies, and a monitoring system. With the Prime Minister, we have decided to put in place a permanent secretariat to ensure permanent ongoing monitoring, and with the United Nations to provide political and technical monitoring.
Reinforce exactly what President Macron has said.